So aquaculture is one of the fastest growing animal protein markets in the world. One of the principal benefits that it has is that it has a lower feed conversion ratio than terrestrial proteins, so chicken, beef, pork. And so if you think of feed conversion ratios as being a kilo of feed given to an animal to obtain 1 kilo of meat, several aquaculture species offer a 1-to-1 ratio, which is less than half of chicken and several times less than pork and beef. In this growing challenge of feeding the world, it's one of the most efficient converters of energy or calories into protein.
The latest crises that we suffered and we are suffering are bringing the attention of everybody to the importance of the availability of food that we have taken for granted. Aquaculture is proving to be one of the most sustainable and efficient food production systems globally.
Aquaculture is a hugely global industry. I think it pays dividends to look at the market around the world. There's a terrific report produced every year by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization that breaks down the trends in the species and the growth of these species. And I think that understanding the marketplace is valuable. It may be the case that the species that are most sold now in 2022 might not be the species of the future. There are some species of aquaculture, I'll take for example tilapia, that hold tremendous potential as a high, fast growth, robust fish. I think at the same time as well, if you look at some of the expensive species of salmon and shrimp, the kind of mega species, those species are flown around the world right now. Not shrimp, but salmon is air freighted across the world. This is unlikely to continue that long into the future. There's a kind of CO2 footprint. And I think that aquaculture will become more localized. There's been a revolution in aquaculture. There was the birth of salmon and marine aquaculture starting in the 1970s in Norway. And then in the 1980s, the birth of the shrimp industry globally, which is now the second most farmed species on the planet and is likely to become the most farmed species. There's innovation that is affecting other areas of food production and really every part of our lives. Digitalization, the Internet of Things, and aquaculture is at an early stage of adopting these technologies.
Tapping into new feed raw materials, that is one of the main challenges that requires innovation. Besides improving and doing a more responsible use of conventional raw materials, new raw materials are there. We need to use them if aquaculture wants to grow. Besides this, improvements in production efficiency obviously are very important. Production efficiency that is affected a lot by fish health. We need a lot of innovation on prevention, on biosecurity, on vaccines and treatment for the fish. The third one is genetics. Innovation in genetics of fish or aquatic species in general, and I include algae also, mollusks. And then of course we have technical innovation requirements in things related to fish welfare, for example, or engineering in both offshore facilities and land-based recirculation aquaculture systems. So the difference that we are seeing in the world between some countries in which aquaculture is developing and some other countries in which aquaculture is not developing and is stagnating or even receding, the reason is that the sectorial drive is not enough. Investments and companies willing to develop aquaculture need an enabling legal framework to develop. So only countries like Norway or like Chile or like Turkey, in which you have both things happening at the same time, this development of aquaculture will happen. And the reason for the importance of enabling, I would say, legal framework has to do with the dependency of aquaculture on the use of public domain land or public domain waters. And the availability of these spaces or of this water for the production of aquaculture is so important. and the consequences of the need of licenses to produce in these spaces or using this water are so important that if we don't have both things at the same time, investors, entrepreneurs, and a legal framework that really bets strategically on aquaculture, if they don't happen at the same time, aquaculture will not develop.
So I think that the next unicorn will come from any type of company that figures out the big challenges that aquaculture faces. So increasing mortality rates at farms and ways of being able to supply traceable, healthy and sustainable aquaculture protein. I was recently involved in a study from AquaSpark, it's an investment fund, and they published a report on AquaTech. It was called The Transformative Power of Digital Aquafeed. In this report, we identified 48 companies that have raised about $250 million of venture capital. Most of this innovation is in the area of digitalization, IoT, software as a service, hardware as a service, and hydroacoustic technology that can track feeding patterns, cameras that can spot disease and the behavioral patterns of fish. I think in the future, some of the innovation is likely to come from genetics, health in the area of feed. There's been constant innovation in that area. And also there is a trend of companies looking at land-based farms with recirculating aquaculture technology. And this is an area actually that Israel has been very strong in. So that's an interesting new trend. That's a really strong opportunity to continue not only building those facilities, but also building technology around those systems. Those systems haven't actually been proven at industrial scale. And there's an opportunity for this industry to really create a number of startups and digital companies that are able to make these systems work more efficiently. I think that's one of the big opportunities out there, especially for Israel.
Israel is, I'm not discovering anything, a very important country on innovation in many different fields, and it has been on aquaculture for many decades already. So there's plenty scope for work on innovation in aquaculture. On aquaculture production, there is a lot of water in front of Israel. Besides the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea is a big area for production. It hasn't grown as expected in the past, but just like many other countries in the world, but there is space for growth on that. For entrepreneurs, I would say, look into sustainable food systems. The food of your future will only come from sustainable food systems. And the possibilities of aquatic production as part of the sustainable food system of the world is going to really see a growth in the coming years. Stay tuned to aquaculture, to its needs, because we will need your ingenuity, your hard work to move the world towards a better future.
It's great to talk about this sector. There's so much potential. I think the story of aquaculture is the story of the world's future food system and making it more sustainable and feeding more and more people in the world. It's always a pleasure, and thanks very much.